Hi, Stuart. Good to see you again, mate. How have
Thank
you
you,
been
Ray.
doing?
Good to see you.
Yeah, they tell me you've been on a bit of a travel trip lately.
You mean on my holidays or
Yeah,
doing all my
you went
presenting?
on holidays and you did a bit of public speaking. Was it Thailand that you recently went to, you told me?
Recently been in Jakarta just a few weeks
Jakarta.
ago. Yeah, heading back there again soon. Yep.
Yeah. Well, let's start by introducing you to the public. I mean, you're a friend, but I think we should introduce you to our audience. Stuart McPhee is a private trader. He's written a really good book called Trading in a Nutshell. Renowned public speaker, and he does a little bit of selective coaching. You have to be very privileged to become on his coaching list. And he's also consulted to a number of financial companies in Australia and Southeast Asia. So that's basically it. He appears, by the way, I've got to tell you this, he appears regularly on Sky Business and Channel News Asia. And he's been, I've traveled with Stuart when we've public spoke. I've been to Mumbai. He's been to New York and for public speaking, Melbourne, Beijing, and so on. So that's a brief rundown on Stuart's background. What I'm going to be looking for today is to see how he can help the audience, how he can help you with your trading. So I'm going to ask him a few questions. We'll have a bit of a private chat. So Stuart, can I start by asking you how and why you became a trader? That's got to be one of the hardest professions in the world, yeah?
It's probably an easy one to answer though, and thank you for those kind words and the introduction. I think with the, where does everybody start trading? I think it's a matter of certainly an interest there somewhere and wanting to make some money. And, who doesn't have that sort of desire to be in a better financial position than they were? So it happened a long time ago that my wife and I had some money saved up and we really wanted to do something with it. And so we sort of sought out the advice of a financial planner, not really knowing what else to do. And I remember that person said, look, you're young enough, you've got plenty of earning ahead of you. Just go and, buy some stocks, invest in stocks. You're in a position where you can accept that sort of level of risk because of your age. So yes, I'd heard about stocks and I knew about companies, but as soon as I had an investment and had an interest in stocks, that's where the interest really then grew because I really wanted to know more about what these public companies were all about. Probably more, even at a most basic level, why their price was different today than what it was yesterday. Like, how does that work? So even just simple, basic things like that at the beginning. So, and then of course, we could talk about this at great length. When you start, you have no idea what's ahead of you. You have no idea the journey that you're, taking the first step on and how incredibly difficult and frustrating and emotionally draining it is going to be. So, but that's the interest, it was really just, hey, let's make some money. Let's do better with the money that we have and what can we do with it. So the buying of stocks got us into that in the first place. Sorry.
So, no, that's okay. Are you mainly a stock trader then? Are you into futures?
No, this is a long time ago now. We have our own superannuation fund, self-managed superannuation fund in Australia. I've had that for 15 years and that certainly has an interest in Australian stocks. And over the last 10 years, it's had a lot of time where it's had a great percentage of that fund, in fact, in cash, just the way it's worked out. But and we've divested a little bit recently and bought some other assets. But what takes up most of my time now with trading is currencies. But,
okay.
That's something that's, come around, we're talking now 20 years and I know that's nothing or not much compared to yourself and the experience you've had in the market. But, certainly stocks was the starting point. I think it's a starting point for a lot of people because they understand what a stock is, something you might even learn at school. So there's that familiarity with owning, a very small percentage of a public company. But, it's certainly evolved and I've traded some options in there a little bit, certainly warrants in the early days. I don't even know if they still exist, but I certainly had quite an interest in trading warrants on Australian companies and more recently since 2008. So all of a sudden, that's a few years ago now, I've certainly been very active in currencies.
Yeah, okay. So, mate, in terms, you mentioned just now trading is a difficult experience. You had a bit of, but have to put a lot of effort into it, experience a lot of frustration, which seems to be a general pattern when we do the interviews. How long did it take you to, would you say it took you to come to a point where you said, look, I'm actually good at this. I'm actually successful at what I'm doing?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And now, yeah, it's a really good question. And I still remember you and I sitting on a panel at some event. I don't think it might have been Singapore, but somewhere where, of course, that question came up. And excuse me, I can think of a couple of people on that panel. And I remember I gave my answer of 5 years. And I'm going to guess yours was something like 9. It was certainly more than 5 to that very same question. And I remember when I said 5 years, probably a lot in the audience were going, oh, wow, that's ridiculous. That's way too long. Whereas I think my fellow panel members were all going, wow, how were you so lucky?
Yes, exactly. I remember that one. I think that was Mumbai, actually.
It may have been, right. So, and here I'm saying 5 years, thinking that was taking a long time. And as I said, it was yourself and others going, wow, you must have been really, really lucky for it to happen that quickly. And of course, no one in the audience is thinking that's quick. So for me, it was 5 years, but I think it was very market-driven as well, because in 1999, we're talking back now, I was really actually starting to make some money. Things were happening, but when early 2000, when the NASDAQ crashed, I lost a ridiculous amount of money. I'm sorry, like a bit ashamed to say. And unfortunately, the next few months, I tried to make it back and lost even more. And that's another story in itself. And the emotion I went through there, and having to tell my wife as a simple conversation I had to have with her, and then tell her a few months later I'd lost even more. So that's another story in itself about emotions and how draining it can be. But having said that, that was a real turning point for me. One, I had to stop trading. I had no choice because I didn't have any money left in the account. And I couldn't put myself through that again. I mean, I had another crack because I tried to make it back, and that's when I lost more, and I thought, this is ridiculous. So that next 12 months, I went on in this incredible journey of seeking knowledge like I'd never done before. I mean, I wasn't, I did well at school, but not through my own efforts. It was just, I really didn't work hard at school. I wasn't a scholarly person. I didn't study hard, but all of a sudden I was studying hard because I was learning as much as I could. I was reading a lot of books. I was going to a lot of seminars. Now, having said that, in the 12 months prior to the NASDAQ crash, I'd actually made some money. So I was now convinced it was possible. And I still to this day believe that is a major obstacle in itself, because when we start out, we have this skepticism and we are certainly not that it is in fact possible to make money from trading. And that's a major obstacle in itself. Think you can or think you can't. Either way, you're right. If you really don't think it's possible, then you'll make sure it's not possible. Absolutely. And you'll put those own obstacles in your way. So I was lucky that I had seen it was possible. Otherwise, I think I would have stopped and never come back. I would have left the engine running, keys in the ignition, and walked away and never come back. The fact that I had seen it was possible then motivated me to then do what I did over the next 12 months, and the amount of study I did and testing. And I wasn't doing testing where I'd use a piece of software, put in some formula and press go. I was doing manual bar by bar. It took me a long time, but I wasn't doing anything else. Like I had the time. That was time really well spent.
Okay.
Anyway, it's a long answer, but gives you a bit of an idea of the background to, and better than I do that this thing doesn't happen overnight. Not even remotely close to happening that quickly. So it is really a journey, and it can be very frustrating at times. And how many people eventually get to the point where I give up. Like this is just not going to work for me. I really wanted it to work, but it's just not going to work. And that could have easily happened to me. Unfortunately, it didn't.
Well, it goes to say a lot for your resilience. That's a pretty horrific experience, and you put the effort into it. A lot of people might have lost that money and then gone and get some more money and had learned from the experience and would have thrown that new capital out the window. But you've actually
my wife was the best bit in that part. That well, I had there was accountability there. It wasn't just my money. It was someone else's too. So maybe that helped me as well. Maybe.
Yeah, I think we share that in common. We've got good partners. I don't know how they put up with us, at least in those days. So, mate, from trading, you went on to public speaking. I remember I met you when we started doing that ATIC conference here in Singapore. So yes. What made you shift? That's quite a different sort of road.
Well, it is, but you know how trading can be a very solitary endeavour. Yes. And, still times today, if you were to ask me what I don't like about trading, one of them would be the solitary nature still to this day. My trading style doesn't have me sit in front of a screen all day, not even remotely close to that. So the public speaking, well, it's a long journey, but it came about when I was in my early days. I was getting involved, this 12 months of really getting into education. I got myself in part of a networking group, and, people would meet on a regular basis, no fees, just everyone getting together and talking trading. Even from that, I learned a lot. And all of a sudden, 3 or 6 months later, at the start, I was the one with mouth closed, not saying anything. But then 3 or 6 months later into that, I'm really picking up so much. All of a sudden, I'm helping others and I'm speaking with a bit of confidence, and may have not been well-founded, but I really felt like I was progressing, I was moving somewhere. Well, all of a sudden, that got to a point where some guy said, you seem to know that software very well. Do you think you could come to my house? I'll pay you. Just come over for a couple of hours and help me. And I go, of course. Like, why wouldn't I? You seem a nice enough guy. You're going to pay me money? Of course. So that started. And then he said, can you come back in a month's time? He told his friend, and all of a sudden I had this little gig going where, I was learning a lot. I was very involved in the learning and following and trying to study. And then all of a sudden I was meeting other traders, and then I was going around and helping them and empowering them and getting them, just a simple thing of using software, not can you teach me risk management in 2 hours? It was really just, how do I draw that line, and how do I save that, and how do I print that out, and just simple basic things like that. So from that, I knew someone else, and they knew someone else, and they attended a seminar, and they may have mentioned my name to someone, and I can't even remember the first time I stood up publicly and spoke. I should. It was probably a pivotal moment, but I really can't tell you when it was. Right. But it was obviously something. I probably stood in front of 8 people and talked about technical analysis, or you must follow the trend, or it's your friend, or something as simple and basic as that. But fortunately, with my background, what I did prior to all of this, I was very comfortable standing in front of large groups of people and presenting and providing orders and guidance and instructions. So standing in front of people wasn't foreign to me. It was something I was very comfortable with. And then all of a sudden I was growing in competence and knowledge and confidence in this trading game. So it grew from that. And how did we get to Attic? A few things have happened in between that start and when you and I probably first met in Singapore or KL or something like that, and had a few events leading up to that. But that's where it all sort of started.
Cool. In terms of the public presentations, what do you think is your biggest benefit for yourself? Well, I'm not talking about the money, just perhaps from an emotional side or personal satisfaction. What do you get out of public speaking?
Getting out of my office is probably the number one. I mean, it sounds silly, but there's an element of truth to that. If I am not traveling, I'm at home. I haven't had a job. Like, I don't go to an office 9 to 5. It's not something I've really ever done. So doing that, it's very solitary, getting out and just meeting with people and speaking with people. And that's an experience in itself, especially when you work out of a home office and have done that for now, 15 or 16 odd years. So just that whole idea of grabbing my passport, going to the airport, flying somewhere, experiencing a different culture, language, food, and all of those things that we did together in all those different countries, that's an experience in itself, and that's a great life experience. So what do I get out of it? I certainly get the opportunity to travel and meet new people and experience new cultures that one day in the future I'll look back and go, wow, I really enjoyed all of those places I visited. Maybe not all the people I met, but you know what I mean. Some really good people I met. Certainly the places I visited, the meals that I had and shared with people, that's tremendous. That to me I value that very dearly. And some of the speaking gigs, some people pay me, and certainly I do a fair few where I'm not paid, and it all depends obviously on what the whole outcome or what the desired outcome is from those events and what have you. But the getting paid is a bonus, as you could relate to. I certainly don't like the idea of paying myself and having to fly myself and put myself in a hotel if I'm benefiting someone else and not getting paid for it. That's a big no-no. But it's all, just what do I get out of it? Meeting others. Every now and again, people teach me stuff as well. They teach me things. They don't even know they're teaching me something, but they are. and I put that away, and that's something where I can think about it differently and present that in a different way sometimes in, again in the future. And yeah, it's just the whole experience for me is fantastic, and I love it.
Oh, cool. Well, it's certainly an important point. I mean, I love teaching. I'm a bit of a ham. I like in front of a crowd, but I often find that I learn more. Sometimes I feel I've learned more from the audience or personal coaching or from the student than I'm giving to them. If I can, like this year, for example, a couple of quick students asked a couple of questions that have led to an explosive return on my capital. I've actually went down that road. You know what I mean?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I can totally relate to that. Definitely people have taught me things. I might see someone who's 70 years of age and has had some interest in the market for 50 years or 45 years. I'm not naive to think that they can't teach me something, and they'll just describe something in a particular way, even in the form of just asking a question. I've never thought about it that way. And so that's an experience in itself. But you made an interesting point. It's a great feeling walking onto a stage and having all these pairs of eyes looking at you. It's a powerful feeling. It's just a really nice feeling to have. And I don't get that when I'm at home, right?
It's very hard when you're on your own.
My children like me and I spend a lot of time with them, but they don't look at me in the same way, and you can be, when I was in Jakarta not so long ago, and I'm going back again shortly, come after lunch on day 2, I'm human. I was getting a little bit tired. But then all of a sudden I walk in front of this group of 20 new people. I don't know where the energy came from. It came from somewhere. That's a great feeling. And it's that feeling of then delivering again, even though I'm really, probably just want to go back to my room and watch some TV. Yeah. It's powerful, right? And then I do another presentation for 2 hours, which I think went really, really well. That's a wonderful feeling. It's a feeling of accomplishment and achievement. And it's rewarding when they all clap you at the end and they're all eye contact throughout and they're all smiling and they're really enjoying it. That's a wonderful feeling, as you can relate to.
Yeah, absolutely. Mate, obviously you've spoken to quite a few people. You do a little bit of private coaching. What do you think is the biggest challenge for the retail trader, for the newbie trader?
Probably a general comment would be that, day one, we have no idea how difficult trading is. Yes, clearly straightforward and simple, but it's the execution and implementation of those things which is the real challenge. Excuse me. And I think it was something you wrote in one of the chapters in my book, in my latest book, where you contributed your part, where you said that very thing. What we have to do in trading is relatively straightforward. It's the actual execution which is a challenge. And I think that's probably hits the nail on the head, is for the newbie, someone beginning out, they really don't realise how difficult it is. And if you think, and I was the same, by the way, you only have to buy and sell. That's it. So how difficult can that be? That's all you have to do. And we don't realise. So we could talk about more specific things about, the importance of having a plan and being very methodical and very structured and very businesslike and following rules and, a system thereabouts, and how do we eliminate or remove those emotions from our decision making. That's obviously an issue. People becoming very irrational and emotionally charged, and we know that doesn't lead to very good trading. So that's obviously an issue in itself. But probably the number one thing is not realising what lies ahead. And I think if you told them right day one, this is going to take a long time, you're going to go through this, you are no doubt going to lose some money in the first couple of years, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. X percent would say, forget it. I'm not interested. I think, if you laid that out all to them. But having said that, you could probably do that to people, and some people would dismiss it, ignore it. Oh, that can't be true. That can't be right. Or I'll be different, because I'm good at this and I run my business for 30 years, so I'm sure this will be a walk in the park, and, those sort of things can pop up as well. But, yeah, probably not realising how difficult it really is.
Okay, so what I hear you saying is their biggest challenge is not realising how difficult it is. Is that right? Is that basically, if I put that in a nutshell?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, if you're just a general idea now, and we can talk specifically, because of the psychology of it all, or because of the emotions, or we don't really respect risk and understand how we need to protect capital. But it all comes back to we really don't know what's ahead of us. We just think it's buying and selling.
Okay, so if I've got a struggling student, let's say it's me, I'm a struggling trader, I'm coming to you for advice at one of your public speaking events, and I say, hey, Stuart, I'm losing tons of money. What would be your advice? What could I do immediately that would help me stop losing so much money?
Yeah, certainly seek out the help of someone else. I think this is something that, there are definitely some self-made traders who never seek the advice of anyone and really just work through it themselves and, are resilient and determined and get somewhere. I don't think that's the majority. I think that's very much an exception. So definitely seek assistance from someone else, whether it be a one-on-one session with someone like yourself or whether it be coming along to a free seminar just to pick up one or two things. Certainly books, I think, offer tremendous value for money. And I always say that's self-serving because I'll probably have a book right beside me. Here you go, you can buy this, by the way, or something like that in my presentations. But books offer tremendous value for money. I could, rattle off 4 or 5 or 6 books now. You would get them for less than $100. And if you stop trading and read some of these books, you might just the amount of things you could learn just from $100. And certainly if you have had some experience and you've made a lot of mistakes, a lot of the things in these books you would hope would resonate with you and they'd make a lot of sense and they'd really hit home hard. Had they not traded and you give them the books and you read Market Wizards, for example, you go, what are they talking about? They're talking about all these losses or et cetera, et cetera. Someone with experience then goes to that. You would like to think would resonate a lot more with them. So certainly seek the advice and the guidance of someone else, whether that's through a course like yourself or some one-on-one or some mentoring, buy a handful of books, go to a few free seminars. I would certainly be looking outside for assistance. And rather than giving specific advice, if you could, you'd probably quite directly say, look, just stop for a little while and let's just work on some other things and then perhaps we can come back to it. If you were licensed to provide that advice, that's probably something you would say.
Okay. One question two questions that come up from here before I sort of rewind this up. You mentioned Market Wizards. I think that's one of the books you would be recommending. Any other book that stands out in your mind? I know you mentioned 4 or 5, but 1 or 2 that you might say that's really worth reading?
Yeah, I think from the late Mark Douglas, I think a couple of his books, I think, was it The Disciplined Trader or Trading in the Zone, something like that. I think his books, are terrific from the psychology standpoint. Purely from a risk management, I like Van Tharp's book, Trade Your Way to Financial Freedom, just a simple exercise of units of R and multiples of R and understanding risk reward and the like. Excuse me. Anything by yourself, of course, Ray? Have to throw
I wouldn't put my book there, mate.
That's a given. That's a given. It goes without saying. And certainly the Market Wizards book, I think, are just terrific. And certainly the original one is the first one that I read. The interesting thing about that book, and probably some of these others as well, is reading them a second and third time is probably more beneficial than you realise, because you read it once, go into the market again for 1 or 2 or 3 years, read it again, and it's amazing how much you probably missed the first time, but now can understand so much more from your experience and what you've gone through. So there's also that to remember as well, is the importance of perhaps going back and reading them as well. Again, I should say.
I missed that book, that last one you mentioned, the first.
Not the Market Wizards book or Van Tharp?
Van Tharp, Mark Douglas.
Mark Douglas. Yep. All of yours.
And now forget that one. Okay, mate, in case we've got, because we've got quite a wide range of audience to this, and I'm sure there'll be some brokers and so on out there listening, in case they want to engage with the public speaker, how do they get in touch with you?
Best place would be my website, myname.com, stuartmcphee.com. Send me a message through there. I never not reply to an email. Doesn't matter what it is or who it's from. And I'm sure, like yourself, you get people who have heard you speak or read your book and they just send you emails. It's something I spend a good couple of hours every day doing, is replying to emails, which I really quite enjoy. It's that engagement. It's not face-to-face, but it's something. So that'd be the best point. It's my website, stuartmcphee.com.
Okay, great, Stuart. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. And we'll catch up with you when I'm in Sydney getting my cataract operation.
Good luck with that. Thanks, Ray. It's been my pleasure. Great to talk to you.
Okay, bye-bye.